landmark expo. India has a remarkable presence there, and Union Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal is addressing the media there. Let's take a look.
And a big thank you to all of you for spending 2 days with us. Really deeply appreciate it. I'm delighted to share with you that this morning, after paying my tributes to the father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi, on his 152nd birth anniversary, I had an absolutely wonderful engagement meeting with His Highness Sheikh Hamid, who's a member of the council, the main government council here, as a part of our high-level task force on investments. I had met him in 2019 for the first time. And I remember it was an outstanding meeting at that time also. We had raised several issues, they had raised several issues. The highlight of today's meeting was that when we reviewed all the decisions and discussions we had had in 19 and the outcomes of that, we realized that we had nearly, on both sides, acted swiftly and ensured that all the decisions taken in the HLTI of 2019 were concluded satisfactorily on both sides. And Sheikh Hamid and his entire team, many of whom spoke during the meeting, individually and collectively appreciated the efforts made in India to ensure satisfactory outcomes on all the issues raised by UAE and the business persons of UAE. On a similar note, all the issues that were flagged by the Indian side 2 years ago, I'm delighted to share with you they had acted very swiftly on all those issues, and we were on a situation that what we discussed today were really the tail end of any relationship, very minor issues. I actually told Sheikh Hamid at the end of the meeting over lunch, and the lunch was an integral part of the meeting because we've discussed so much more during lunch that is really the agenda for the next 1 year. But in the official meeting, the issues were very, very small, nothing much of significance. But amongst the decisions we took was a joint task force which will offer a common platform for continuous dialogue to remove any small bottlenecks that may come up from time to time. But more importantly, its mandate also includes raising new opportunities for collaboration between the UAE and India. I think that was the highlight, where we are now gone beyond the stage of resolving problems. We have gone beyond the stage of resolving problems and are now entering the phase of creating and encouraging each other to raise new opportunities. And that's the sign of a matured partnership. We also reviewed the progress of our discussions around the comprehensive economic partnership between the two nations. And I'm delighted to share with you, it's only 10 days since we started the dialogue, and both sides expressed deep appreciation of each other's considerations, and both sides felt that the progress was on track to get the outcomes which were set out by Dr. Thani and me in New Delhi on 22nd of September. To your question, yes, we also discussed their request for further strengthening the bilateral investment treaty between the UAE and India. We have had several rounds of discussions already. And we are trying to also fast track that, because I do believe that the interest for investments that has been expressed by the UAE government, their sovereign wealth funds, and the business persons in UAE is tremendous. Honestly, I'm overwhelmed by the excitement in the UAE around investing in India. And in a sense, they have almost asked us to present many more opportunities around roads, around railways, infrastructure projects. They have offered their cooperation to try and bring down the cost of logistics in India through mutual support. They've given a lot of ideas. I mean, in one of my meetings today, for example, they said, we can guarantee you do this, the cost of logistics of a set of products which are exported from India to UAE will come down by between 0.5% and 1%. Now, when you're looking at logistics, which is, we already had to stress that it's 13% in India against 8-9% across the world. Imagine a 0.5 or 1% reduction from that 13% bridges the gap by 1/4. And 3, 4, 5 steps or ideas like this can actually make us competitive in logistics to anywhere else in the world. And the UAE, and more particularly the companies in the UAE, have certainly done very well in managing logistics. And India is happy to learn from them and engage with them and partner with them to bring down the cost of logistics in India. So moving from a stage of legacy issues to a stage of significant bump up in investments has been the highlight of today's high-level task force on investments. And I'll take this opportunity to express my deep gratitude to the government of the UAE, more particularly to Sheikh Hamid for his wonderful cooperation and support to our mutual efforts to expand this relationship to the next level. The floor is open for any questions.
Hello, thank you, sir. The questions are welcome, but I would request all of you to introduce your organizations also and name yourself before raising the question. Questions will remain particularly to the subject concerned, not beyond it. Yeah.
To the overall visit.
Yes, visit. Yeah. Next one, hand raise, please. We can get the mic. Okay.
Mr. Goyal, we saw the press release that was issued by India UAE on the task force. There was conversation on greater investments by UAE sovereign wealth funds in India. Any particular areas where you see more investments coming? What are the kind of tax incentives some of the sovereign wealth funds here have asked for? And also on the air transport bit, has any timeline been discussed, or any other airlines which will resume operations from here after this meeting of the task force?
I'm happy to share with you that the excitement around increasing investments was across sectors. But of course, while talking, they did raise the example, for example, of road sector. They said that we'd really like to see roads being monetized to scale, because they are not really looking for very small projects. They are looking at a basket of projects or larger investments. The sovereign wealth funds generally look for larger scale of investments. They're looking for brownfield investments in projects which may over the years have started but not yet matured fully, which may be in need of funds. They particularly made a mention that once more and more brownfield projects get funded and get on track, that's when the greenfield investors come into action. They see that things are actually moving. So I think it was a very practical approach that they demonstrated on investments. In terms of air transport, they have, of course, flagged off the issue of increasing the flights under the air bubble in which we are operating right now. I'm given to understand that all flights are going full both ways, Earlier I was under the impression while coming into UAE, because I paid for the ticket, and now I'm given to understand that both ways there's huge demand, and there is possibility of increasing flights under the air bubble, particularly also in view of the Dubai Expo. Once I get back, I will certainly flag off this issue. It has also been flagged off during Dr. Thani's visit, but I'll certainly take it up. However, there are certain grave issues in the long run which still need to be sorted out between the two countries on expanding our bilateral air transport arrangements, which will of course require the civil aviation ministries of both governments to engage more deeply, about which the HLTI is not the right forum to discuss. I am given to understand that one airline has recently been given accreditation or permission to fly from UAE, Air Arabia probably, or what's the... Yeah, I think just, Ravi, just check that out. I was given to understand that approval has come through and was also announced during the HLTI.
Hello, sir. Yeah, Asif from me. Sir, though we have been seeking more investments from UAE, there is standing commitment of 75 billion investment since 2015, and you yourself have admitted recently that we haven't been able to use it fully. So where the problem lies actually? And the second issue, sir, since 2019, what are the issues on both sides which have been resolved? Thank you.
I can assure you that when I met them in 19, this was one of the main areas of concern, that we haven't been able to really absorb the $75 billion, and we had actually, as I went back, started working on it, but COVID pandemic came in, and with travel restrictions, with restrictions on a number of score, the brownfield projects and the new opportunities did take a backseat. But now with the COVID pandemic gradually getting eased out, with vaccinations in India at record numbers of almost 1 crore, 10 million a day, the speed at which we are vaccinating, it seems like October end, you'll almost be single dose for every willing adult. Another 2 or 3 months after that, probably the whole country will be double dose vaccinated for all willing adults. And
well, they saw a press conference being addressed by Union Commerce and Industry and many other ministries that Piyush Goyal holds, including textiles. He's there in Dubai for the Dubai Expo because India has a massive pavilion there which is showcasing all that India can bring to the world, all that India is doing for more than 1 billion plus of its people, 1.5 billion almost going into the next decade. And he said that he had an excellent meeting with Sheikh Hamid, who heads the Sovereign Wealth Fund as well of the UAE, and that they're looking for investments in almost every sector is what Piyush Goyal said. He said a number of things. He said that he's overwhelmed with the interest that is there to invest in India. He said the Sovereign Wealth Fund there raised the road sector in terms of investments there, monetization of the roads. They also talked about how perhaps the air bubble, there could be more flights in the air bubble between India and the UAE because travel is also getting ramped up between both the countries. And there's an agreement for a dialogue with the UAE and others to speed up investment as well. A task force is also being set up. It's going to be a joint task force to remove all trade and investment bottlenecks. And the mandate for this task force is to raise new opportunities at both ends as well, to ensure that it's a win-win situation for both India and the UAE. We'll keep you updated on what's happening there at the Dubai Expo as well in the coming days. But for more, do stay tuned to DD India.